Thanks everyone for coming. My name is Aaron Phillips. I am a client principal with Ashling and the host of this webinar. I am coming at you live from Toronto, Canada, and I'm joined today by my guests, Bob Sakunas and Andrew Kemble. And I'll let the guests introduce themselves in just a minute once I get through my little intro spiel here. But we've got some great content planned for everyone here this morning. Really want to quickly introduce myself. I don't want to spend too much time here, but I am one of our delivery and business development leaders here at Ashling and our communications mining expert. So I have spent a lot of time working with both UiPath, which is where Bob joins us from, and Greenshield, which is Andrew, of course. The style of webinar we'll be delivering today is going to be fairly casual. So we have a few slides that we're going to share at the beginning, but it'll be primarily discussion based. Please ask questions in the chat, use the Q&A feature if you can. I'll go ahead and read through those questions and we'll try and weave them into that kind of open discussion that we're having. If your question doesn't get answered, we'll try and circle back and get you at the end. Because we're not sharing a lot of slides, we won't necessarily be sharing this content after the presentation, but we do have some other content, case studies and such that will be going out. So very quickly, our agenda for today is start with a quick introduction to our speakers. And so I will let them introduce themselves in just a second. We'll then start to talk a little bit about the technology itself on today's kind of driving today's transformation journey, and that's UiPath's IXP and communications mining. We'll then talk a little bit about Greenshield and some of the business context that led them to embark on their AI and transformation journey, including covering of kind of the pilot / proof of concept, the full scale implementation, and then talk a little bit about how that's impacted Greenshield and what's next for them. So maybe with that, Bob, I will throw it over to you to introduce yourself, maybe your role at UiPath quickly, and then tell us a little bit about IXP as the technology really driving this story here.
Thanks, Aaron. Hi, everyone. I'm Bob Sakunas, and I am a customer experience automation expert at UiPath. UiPath is an enterprise automation company that focuses on robotic and agentic automation. And in my role, I work with our contact center customers to help them unlock value and improve the customer experience through automation. So today's topic, which is around mining the inbox, focuses on a set of capabilities within the UiPath platform called IXP. And I thought it would be good to start the conversation with just a quick explanation of these capabilities for anyone that's not familiar with UiPath or what we do. So IXP stands for Intelligent Extraction and Processing. And its primary focus is to unlock the data that's contained within communications and documents so that it can be leveraged by robots, AI agents, and people for automation and insights. IXP is made up of three components. And the first is communications mining, and that's going to be our primary focus of the discussion today. Communications mining is an AI-powered solution that can read short-form communications, such as email, Slack messages, case descriptions, and extract intent, sentiment, and context data. This data can then be mined for insights, such as what's frustrating your customers, or could be exposed for automation. Since most processes involve a communication somewhere along the way, comms mining is a very valuable capability because without it, automation potential tends to be limited. It's locked inside of communications that you can't access. So it's a really powerful tool for automation. Now, a lot of communications also have documents attached. So how do we tackle those? And that's where the second component of IXP comes in, document understanding. So UiPath Document Understanding is a no-code solution that uses AI to extract, interpret, and process information from documents. These are generally what we call structured or semi-structured documents, or ones that have some repetition in their format. So think of things like invoices or orders or identification documents. Document understanding is essentially trained on samples of these documents, and it's then able to read and extract from them in a highly repeatable fashion. And this makes it great for automation. But of course, not all documents have this repeatable structure. So for the other documents, ones that are complex and what we call unstructured documents, This is where the third component of IXP comes in, generative extraction. Generative extraction uses Gen AI to read, interpret, and extract data from unstructured documents. So think of things like balance statements or complex charts or tables, or even certificates or contracts. Um, Generative extraction is able to extract data from these unstructured documents and convert it to the structured inputs that are needed to reliably run automations. So with these three capabilities, IXP is basically able to extract, interpret, and process information from communications and documents of any type or format. And so that's why it's one of the core components of our automation platform, and it's used in a lot of cases to get the information needed to actually perform automation. So back to you,
Perfect.
Aaron.
Thanks, Bob. Andrew, for those who are unfamiliar, can you tell us a little bit about Greenshield and your role there?
Absolutely. Thanks, Aaron. So Greenshield is Canada's first payer provider. We're a nonprofit social enterprise organization that historically we might have been known as an insurer, specifically in the health and dental space within Canada. But over the last, say, about 5 years now, we've been really transforming as an organization into the provider space. So not just processing on the payer side of insurance claims, but also helping Canadians access better healthcare. It's really important for us as an organization that as a nonprofit, that we're taking those extra earnings that come through and we're cycling them back into their healthcare system. So finding ways that we can better support healthcare within Canada.
Incredible. Appreciate it. This journey, of course, it's not just about technology, right? It's about people and making an impact as well. So let's start at the beginning, maybe, Andrew. And can you talk about sort of the original business challenge and what kind of led you to start exploring AI-powered solutions in the contact center?
Absolutely. So I'm going to take maybe a little bit of a step back and just talk about the role that I'm in now and how it's evolved and really how comm mining was an important piece of that evolution. So I think it was around 2023. I was responsible for our forecasting and our staff planning with the organization. So I sat within our finance and strategy areas in the organization. And every year, we did a lot of continuous improvement objectives and initiatives in the contact center, specifically looking at the number of calls that we were handling. Calls represented the vast majority of our contacts, specifically when I joined in 2019. I think it was like 90% of our contacts were phone. And we did a lot of initiatives and a lot of analytics and understanding about why are customers calling in? Why are plan members calling in right now? What are their concerns? How do we help with self-service? Like, what do we do to help contain some of these calls and just get a better understanding of what kind of issues our plan members or providers are facing? So we had a whole host of analytics. We had the speech analytics piece. Anyone with a contact center background would understand that suite of technologies that we were looking through. We did a lot of intentional coaching around, okay, how do we help promote self-service tools? What self-service tools do we have to build to allow better access that comes through? And year over year, we noticed either a reduction in call volume or basically our call volume staying the same. But what was happening was specifically since that 2020 time period, we saw an increase of about 20 to 25% year over year volume in emails. So we're spending all these initiatives and all these efforts at controlling our voice channel, but we just sort of assumed that'll also work for email. So every year, as we're doing our capacity and our staff planning, I'm needing to put more and more resourcing into answering our emails. And it kind of got to the point of just trying to understand why. Why is the forecast so much further off on emails than on phone calls? What does this channel look like? What's so unique about emails that, why are we missing the mark essentially on emails that we're hitting on phones right now?
Pre-
So Oh,
Sorry.
so that was the issue we were trying to solve, was just that understanding that contacts that are increasing, and wanting to understand why. What's the nature here? How do we get it self-service? How do we basically help handle these concerns? And again, wanting to understand maybe there's something we can do differently in the approach that we're taking to service our members.
I appreciate the background, Andrew. And Bob, I know you spent a lot of time in the contact center. Is that kind of consistent with your experience? Has there traditionally been a big focus on phone and less on email, or what kind of makes email unique, maybe for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's traditionally what I've been seeing. Email is unique, I think, one, because it's asynchronous in nature, unlike phone or chat, which require real-time participation. Email allows both the sender and the recipient to kind of engage at their own convenience. So this allows more time between turns and really the ability to craft well-considered responses versus more the immediate reactions you get in email or chat or in phone or chat. I think it's also unique that it automatically keeps a record of conversations. So it creates sort of that searchable record that we're familiar with in email. And a lot of customers really like this, especially businesses for certain transaction types. So if you think about things that involve contracts or orders or even disputes, we tend to see email being a preferred channel in those areas. And last, I'd say, it's a really flexible channel. It supports kind of brief notes as well as detailed explanations, and you can attach files, you can put links in email or pictures, and it also works across devices, technology stacks internally, and even countries and time zones. So, for all these reasons, it's really stayed relevant over the years as a core channel for customer support, even with the emergence of chat. So.
As an automation practitioner, I always hated emails because it was so hard to reliably drive any kind of automation off of them, right? So even just a few years ago, a lot of the kinds of solutions that we were building involving emails would try to extract data, using structured patterns like regular expressions, or even actually asking human beings to structure the information from the email into some kind of a web form, right, to trigger a workflow. So the technology in the last few years has certainly come a long way. It is now kind of easier than ever to automatically kind of classify emails into their different categories or request type or intent, and then actually extract some of that key data from the email that you'd need to process. So, Andrew, I know you kind of started your pilot or proof of concept journey with communications mining and Ashling in 2013. Can you tell us a little bit about what that proof of concept looked like from your perspective? And then maybe I'll comment on it from the service provider side.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start off by saying I was a pretty big skeptic of the technology. I understand, and I understand the resourcing that needed to go into speech analytics, and exactly to what Bob was talking about. This is an asynchronous channel. What is it going to look like? Somebody going in and reading all of the emails to say what type of email communication came through again? What is the sentiment analysis going to look like? I was safe to say very, very skeptical of this, but I thought, what do I have to lose? I don't know I don't understand what's going on right now with the volume. And at least this way we can kind of confirm my suspicions and I can make sure that I feel really clever because I knew what was going on here. Um, so we had 4 weeks to launch the proof of concept, and we had a few, I'm going to say simple goals, but I think they were hard to deliver on. The first one was we wanted to understand the nature and the volume that was related to these requests. So email categorization. One of the ways that we look at staffing is we look at have we trained the staff to handle the right types of questions? And at the time, very insurance focused. So I was curious, what's the split between number of dental questions we get versus number of pharmacy questions that we get versus number of extended health questions that come through? Because maybe there's a skilling issue and maybe I need to kind of train more folks on extended health and dental or other phone channels. We also wanted to extract some key data that was coming through about what sorts of questions or what's the nature of the questions that come through, as well as are there certain demographics that are really asking the bulk of the questions. We had some assumptions about who was the person that was emailing in and what did they look like as a plan member. High level, we get a lot of questions from providers and from plan members that come through on the insurance side, and we had essentially assumed that every question that we're going to get will be through a plan member. Providers just call in because it's easier for them. We wanted to understand sentiment. That was one of the pieces that I was really, I didn't have a lot of confidence in pre-proof of concept on how accurate is sentiment analysis going to be. Reading and understanding sentiment out of emails is challenging for a human to do. Understanding, is this a happy email or is this a sad email can be really tough. There's a lot of nuance in written communication that gets skewed all the time. So I was certainly not really excited to understand, all right, how is the machine going to do at this? Or how is artificial intelligence going to do at understanding that sentiment? And then, of course, we were looking to find automation opportunities. So what are some of these pain points and what kind of opportunity do we have to leverage to say, maybe there's a way to reduce what that workload looks like? We were also looking to categorize and understand what does the maintenance cost look like internally? So, how many headcounts do I have to provide to basically keep the tool up and running, to categorize, to recategorize, really trying to understand what that looks like for us. And then, ultimately it comes back to ease of use for us too, which is how easy is this? Do I need to hire data scientists who have to take up and use the machine learning algorithms to understand proper classification and, just what does that look like for us? Or is this something that I can put in the hands of a subject matter expert, or something I can put in the hands of a supervisor or a coordinator, frontline staff member?
I remember early on in the project, Andrew, it was so important to get buy-in from our business partners. And we actually had, I think, 3 folks from the contact center come and train the classification model themselves.
Mhm.
And it just helped so much to have them see the product, see it work, get excited about it, and then convey that excitement right to their leadership. Hey, this is something that's actually going to make a difference here.
It meant a lot, right? Like every time we can get excited about a new technology, I don't have to use the technology every day, ultimately, where it comes through again. So small pain points, user interface issues are just things that, why would I be worried about that? I just care if the technology is working. But I knew the business would care. So we wanted something that was easy to use, easy to understand, and doesn't require, a significant amount of effort or time investment from the business to learn how this looks.
Absolutely. So let's move to the end of the proof of concept. What kind of results did you see out of that early kind of 4 week pilot there?
Yeah, so over the course of those 4 weeks, we categorized over 100,000 emails that came through. So we gave a subset of emails from specifically customer-facing emails from a subset of time period. We cared about accuracy. So over 93% of those emails were categorized accuracy that came into play. And we identified about 20 opportunities for automation to help handle. And those could be small automations. One of, I think, my favorite ones that just I never considered that came through, and I look back and I think, how could I ever have missed this? Is just member verification and validation. The amount of time that goes in, which is we receive an email from a plan member or provider saying, "Hey, my name's Andrew. Can you give me my coverage?" And to go through and to validate to make sure that you are speaking to Andrew Kemble, that yes, this is indeed the correct person to give information to. Just total miss on my end of understanding or thinking of opportunities. But that's massive. That's minutes out of every single email that comes through again, or even from just a response or a turnaround time perspective. The ability to say, hey, I'm not able to verify that you're Andrew. Can you please respond with 3 of the following 5 pieces of information that's needed? So that way, when I think about the value of work that our customer care agents are performing, they're performing the actual issue of addressing. They don't have to worry about validation or verification that comes in. So that was a very exciting piece to sort of find that opportunity. And then we started finding opportunities like accurate sentiment. So we did a lot of testing, and sorry for the hoops that I made you jump through, Aaron, of how are we going to classify sentiment appropriately. So we did several like blind tests of getting folks to read emails internally and to classify, is this a good email or is this a sad email? And essentially classifying. I was one of the testers that came through and collating all of the results together to see how accurate is the sentiment analysis. And it's safe to say that, yeah, there was a lot of disagreement internally from the human testers on what was positive or what was negative. But when we all looked at the results of the UiPath sentiment analysis that came through, we all essentially aligned on it saying, okay, we think this was the most reasonable approach to take and understanding why this was good or why this was bad. So just from a quality standpoint of understanding sentiment, I was very blown away at its ability. Um, we also had a lot of these soft learnings, which was we thought we understood the contacts that were coming through, but what really the first takeaway was our email channel looked entirely different from the categorization of concerns from the plan member base that was emailing in and just understanding the nature of why someone might choose to have asynchronous communication versus one-on-one voice communication that was taking place. Um, we had a demo that needed to be involved, which was testing
Yeah.
eligibility. So we made them certainly jump through hoops of not just, the folks at Ashling, not just showing us does the technology work, but what value can come from there. So we do something called an eligibility check, which is, all right, when Andrew emails in and he says, hey, am I going to be covered for a massage therapist? We can respond saying, hey, here's what coverage looks like. So when I think about one of the values of asynchronous communication, now we have the potential for 24/7 communication of some of these simple low-hanging fruit opportunities that a plan member can access at any point in time. It was just screaming value for us. And thinking about it from that plan member perspective, which is what are we doing here with technology? We're now giving you access 24/7 to things that you might not have had access to before. And then the final one was just the potential benefit that came through. We took these results that came through and we had a smaller meeting with their senior leadership team, and we were able to just demonstrate the value to them. And they started seeing things of just problems that we didn't know were going to be coming through, and they started seeing the value in that potential solutions. As an organization, we've been going through a lot of change and a lot of transformation and what it means to be a payer provider in Canada. And there were a lot of call outs of this potential of basically saying, okay, this is great. Can we get started now? And what can we do if we get started tomorrow, essentially, with the project?
Yeah, bringing everything to life with a real demonstration, I think, to me was kind of one of those aha moments, right? It was really when everyone could see the value of the types of solutions we could build with communications mining. And the fact that we were able to identify, I think 20 different opportunities just in that proof of concept. We then spent, I think, the next 2 weeks or so vetting those 20 opportunities, right, going through them and applying kind of our value framework. And I know for Greenshield, really the big driver here was it had to positively impact the plan member experience, and it had to positively impact, right, the employee experience. So it's not that fun for a contact center agent to write the fifth email today of, can you please provide me your ID before I can help you, right? And so those were a lot of the types of solutions that we tried to move forward with. Um,
Just on that, it was really exciting seeing the one of the outputs of IXP is a topography map that shows here's the nature and the volume of communications that come through and the sort of questions that happen. And it was exciting to kind of put that up on the board and to basically start Xing through them, saying, is this a good opportunity for automation or is this not a good opportunity for automation? Is this too complicated or not complicated enough? And now, as the team looks to explore more, and as we're looking just to understand the nature of work, this is almost our go-to solution, which is give me that heat map, give me that view of what the nature of work that's happening here. So that way we can understand and we can basically find those automation opportunities or those AI opportunities within a team. Um, it's been very transformative in the way that we think about supporting large teams or teams that their primary work source is out of a shared inbox. What before was I can never get to that team, I won't be able to support. Now it's a real strong opportunity for absolutely I can dive in and I can get started. Give me another 4 week proof of concept so we can dive in and we can find years worth of opportunities here to automate.
Absolutely, and not to toot my own horn too much, but I know that when we started our proof of concept, there were a bunch of other different sort of AI initiatives going on at the same time. And
Mhm,
correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we were the last to start and the
mhm,
first to finish and
mhm.
show kind of real impact there. So
It was it was exceptionally remarkable at I'm going to say we were venturing in this AI space, right? News started breaking in 2023 of have you tried this Gen AI stuff and is it working or whatever it is. So we wanted to explore a little bit, and we had multiple vendor projects that were in flight. And this one was exactly to your point. We were the last group to get started. It was very much like, all right, fine, I guess we can find time to do this work. And it was absolutely painless on our end of things. It was done within 4 weeks, really strong results that happened, really excited buy-in from executive teams and also from frontline staff that were participating in the workshop. Um, it was honestly a painless experience all the way through, and it was so exciting to just and empowering to say, all right, let's now turn this into production. I'm sure we've all had experiences of great, there's another technology coming in and just the pain that's sometimes related to that. And you get your subject matter experts excited by it, and then the project now goes on and on and weeks and weeks might happen. But no, this was a very, very tight timeline with actionable results that came out in less than 4 weeks.
absolutely. So successful proof of concept. We met sort of our objectives going into it. At the end, you were able to secure that executive buy-in to move forward with the full-scale implementation. What did scaling look like kind of during the full delivery there?
So we had a very hard deadline that we needed to get these solutions in place for, which is some of the transformations that were happening in the organization. So it really turned into the first problem with how do we scale up for this? We didn't have the internal talent that was able to take on this technology. It was new. We were getting exposure to it. Keep me honest, Aaron, but I think we were the first proof of concept in North America that used communication mining, if not for sure in Canada, but I think in North
Definitely
America.
Canada. Yeah.
Mhm. So there was a lot of learning that was going on, and it basically turned into now, how do I basically get the best result possible? So after we went through and we basically, signed on the dotted line, we had to, involved in this was we had to migrate other stuff to the cloud that was coming through. There was a lot of just this enablement that took place over about a month. But then we had this tight timeline of, okay, we've got 12 weeks to get as big of an impact as we can, moving from a proof of concept environment into full production. So the first 4 weeks of that was based on retraining, getting everything in place in production environment, making sure that it's integrated nicely with our Exchange servers. And then it turned into, okay, now does production data look different than the proof of concept data? It does look a little different than what came through. We're very seasonal in our trending and the types of communications. And then now we've got 8 weeks to get as much value out of this as we can from an automation opportunity. So a lot of great support from Aaron and team at just helping us to, I mean, it was easy to quantify, I think, the number of requests that came through, worked very closely with the business about making sure that their pain points aligned with what the volumes looked like. And then it just turned into go, right? We've got 8 weeks. What
Yeah.
can we do in 8 weeks? The Ashling team was great at scaling us up and basically providing us the developer resources to get started on those projects and just the maturity also at structuring what this pod looks like and what this comm mining pod looked like. And it really turned into an exercise of whatever it takes, you've got 8 weeks.
Yeah, it was certainly a tight timeline from our perspective on probably what was at the time the most ambitious project we had done together. With all the deadlines, I know we had our first solutions live in 8 weeks, right? With the others kind of trickling in over the next few weeks. You talked about sort of one of the big use cases that we had, which was the identity verification. And to me, that was an interesting one, right? Because it actually didn't show up as one of the different categories of emails, right? This was actually something that we saw when we were talking to subject matter experts, and we'd see these emails come in. We'd notice that, a good percentage of them weren't necessarily being associated with like a CRM record. And so we tried to figure out why. And of course, it was because folks were emailing in using their, third Gmail address that wasn't necessarily the one on file, making it a little bit harder for the agents to go and actually verify their identity. But I know one of the other sort of solution themes that we had, Andrew, was taking existing automations that were previously being kind of human triggered and fully automating those with communications mining. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, so one of our strategies of how do we get as much value in 8 weeks as possible was how do we repurpose other automations that we had in place in our customer contact center and essentially get value out of that different median channel. So one of the automations we had in place was we called it an eligibility letter. But there are times of when plan members want something in writing that says, here's what you're covered for because they're traveling, they're going away. It gives them that confidence. And these letters would take about 15 minutes plus to draft it from a human side of things. So you call in, I have a conversation with you, and now I'm going to draft you that email. And I'm going to draft you that letter and I'm going to send it however it is that you choose to take it. Well, this was a significant portion of our email volume that came through too. So the question turned into, why do I need a human to be the one to say, yes, generate this letter when we can have this automation generate that letter, right? We have confident high classification, high accuracy percentages that this is the correct piece of information. So let's have the robot generate the email that comes through, generate that eligibility email. We had vetted that, that automation. I think it was in place for about 2 years prior to, and so we knew that the automation worked, and then we just had to tweak and enhance the front end to get more value out of it.
Yeah, I think that was actually one I had built back in the day, one of my early automations with Greenshield, and I'm glad to see that it's still chugging along. You touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to kind of circle back to it. And that was the idea of kind of promoting self-serve solutions, right? And something that can happen outside of even traditional operating hours. But, a lot of the time, there is a self-serve option for plan members to resolve their own problem. So can you talk a bit about how we kind of promoted that self-serve through communications mining in our solution there?
Absolutely. I think we looked for opportunities of just what are some nice wins for our plan members to have, right, to extend these hours of operations. And the one that kept coming out was at the time we had launched a new website and a new kind of plan member experience portal that was coming through and how sign-in looked. And anytime you have change like that, you're going to get a lot of questions, right? How do I navigate? What's my password? How do I reset those pieces? And our strategy is promote self-service, empower plan members and providers to access the information the way that our contact center does, or the way that we do internally. Um, but if you need help navigating those things, maybe you forget your password, because let's be honest, how often do you log in to submit a claim that comes through? Maybe you log in once a year, maybe you log in once a month, but there's a chance that you're going to forget your password. Well, you've been busy, right? Maybe you're running around throughout the day working, then take your kids to ballet lessons that come through, and you come back late at night and it's finally 11 o'clock and you sit down and you're like, all right, I'm now going to submit for my massage therapist appointment that comes through. You open up, your insurance app and you're like, what's my password? Hit the forget password button, right? You get prompted with all the steps. You're like, why did my password, right? Why did the email not come through? How do I reset this? And you look and you're like, well, now it's midnight. Try to call in, you try to email in, and you're like, great, I'm not going to be able to handle this for like 2 days now until someone gets back to me. So that was the problem we were trying to solve here. And we realized that a lot of the times the plan members just need a nudge. They need it written in a slightly different way or maybe a little bit longer. They need that validation of going through, okay, what's my first step? What's my second step look like? What does my multi-factor authentication look like here? These requests that come through. So we were able to essentially expand our operating hours with anything web related. How do I navigate the web? How do I submit a claim on the web? How do I get a password reset that comes through? And how do I register my account? We're able to take all of those kinds of natures of emails. We already had templates written to them, and we're able to start responding to that nature of those requests that came through. So instead of being an 8 to 8 contact center, we're now a 24/7 contact center when you email in with a web request.
I know I as a Greenshield plan member appreciate that because you can post, the password reset instructions all over your website. I will not find them, and I will email in asking about how to get that done, right? Even if it's on your frequently asked questions page, I find just being able to kind of answer those incoming questions very specifically is super helpful, right? And it just helps give that nudge I need to kind of
Mhm.
make it happen myself. Um, Again, just quickly for our viewers, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat for Andrew, myself, or Bob, and we'll happily kind of answer them. Haven't seen too many come through just yet. The
I have a
last
question
type,
for Andrew,
yeah,
Aaron. I'll throw out. Andrew, you mentioned earlier sort of a primary focus on phone and maybe less on email. And I would say I see this kind of universally with the UiPath customers I work with as well. We always are talking about phone and to the extent live chat as well, but very, very, very often not on email. It's kind of deprioritized or they're looking to move off of it because it's not as efficient. It sounds like you're kind of talking about the opposite, right? Like through the ability to now read and interpret email and put automation behind it, you're pushing maybe more volume to it, or how has your experience changed your strategy overall as what channels you use and
Absolutely. The kind of the nature of what's our preferred method of communication now when it comes through again. I think most folks with a contact center background would say we want, depending on the nature, but for things like support, we want no questions, no communication that comes through again. And there was a big effort at the time of, what email are we putting out there? How are we getting support? What's the nature that we want these requests to sort of come through? And now it's an easy solution for us, which is put it in email. Right? Make it really easy for plan members to know and to get support of where they need to be pointed at. And what we'll do is absolutely we'll expect to see an impact on the communication mining results the next day when we start releasing those things. But think about the value from sentiment analysis. I know if plan members are happy or if they're frustrated about that change that took place. I can speak to the number of volumes the next day to our marketing team and to our kind of senior leadership team to say, here's the number of requests that have happened or that came through. Here's a sentiment on those requests. And then, I'm going to say we can do a pretty good job of then finding those opportunities to lessen the work on our contact center agents. As we've been evolving into the payer provider space, there's been some new opportunities that have come up that we've needed to be really agile in our ability to adapt to the nature of those concerns. And having a tool like Comm Mining at our disposal in place, or really how quick it is to set up, really just kind of I describe it as it strengthens my toolbox that I have, right? I now have tools at my disposal to assist in workload, to assist with volatility that were not at my disposal pre-2023.
and do you see the potential to kind of expand the automation
Mhm.
availability by kind of go beyond comms mining, like the things
Mhm.
like document understanding or even using AI agents in the process?
Oh, absolutely. I think So comm mining was our first venture into anything AI at Greenshield. So we were using the generative extraction capabilities with the machine learning components of tagging the different pieces. But then very quickly we realized, there's a subset of emails right now that are just please see attached. How do I get at that please see attached? Document understanding is how I get at the please see attached. So we went and we started looking at document understanding. Very similar interface. The team that is familiar with comm mining then is very naturally familiar with document understanding. They know how it works and how the setup looks. So that was just great from a transfer of knowledge perspective of you learn one, you essentially have learned two. And then it now gets into this very exciting world of AI agents, which is when we look back at the teams that have comm mining in place or that have some document understand DU in place for it. Now it turns into the natural, how do we use AI agents to allow some more end-to-end kind of automation opportunities or really consumer journeys and consumer pathways, having that opportunity to even go back and to revisit what we thought was complete, but now the new technology that comes through basically says, hey, this wasn't complete anymore. These pain points or these values that required a non-deterministic output. Right, or maybe they were more ideation related of like, I know how to answer this. I know what the answer should be, but I don't know how to program the steps to it, are all ripe opportunities for an AI agent to come in play and to basically fix the pathway that we had in place from before.
Yeah, and that idea of kind of iterative transformation too, right? It gives folks time to get used to and optimize existing solutions and then start to build on and extend them when the comfort's there. So I think, Bob, we followed your playbook to the T. We started with communications mining, immediately moved into document understanding as we noticed sort of more and more complicated requests coming in with documents, and then are now starting to look more on that agentic side. Andrew, you covered a lot of this, I think, already, but maybe we could just be a little more explicit and talk about kind of the impact of that full-scale implementation of communications mining and its accompanying automations. Can you talk a little bit about both sort of the expected and maybe some of the unexpected benefits that you saw coming out?
Absolutely. So I think the expected benefit that we had at first was just having a better understanding of the nature of communications that were coming through and being able to respond a lot quicker to see if there were changes that took place. My favorite example of this, despite the scar tissue that might be associated with it, is things like web releases or updates that are coming through or changes to sign-in portals. Well, now with communication mining, I can tell you the number of requests we had yesterday versus the requests we had today that are related to that navigation or related to concerns. So we had, as a business, we have a much faster response time. We know what to target from triaging of releases, future updates, patches, bug fixing, all of that. We have a lot stronger data to make data-informed decisions that impact our plan members successfully. Turnaround times. Our turnaround times have improved dramatically in terms of how long it was taking to access an email before. So not only do we have the mix of, I'm going to say the emails that come through right away, right? You email with a password reset and you get a response in 5 minutes that comes through, but also just the nature of the other more complicated emails. Because we have, I'm going to say, handled some of the easy emails or some of the noisy emails, those things like the verification emails that come through those other pieces. It means that our agents spend time on those more complicated or higher value email responses. Um, I'm sure everyone in the contact center world will appreciate this. Over time, the nature of email requests are getting more and more complicated. They're getting more and more specific. The reason why our plan members are choosing to email in, I mean, they've made a choice. And a lot of times that choice is they want to make sure that they ask the question the right way. It's a complicated question for them. They want the response in writing so they can take and they can understand what that means. Despite our best efforts, we're still a complicated company. There's a lot of regulations. There's a lot of meat behind what we say. And I think about it from truthfully from my perspective is anytime I ask a question about my own benefit eligibility and am I covered for this or not, I just want to take the conversation, run it into Chat GPT and say, can you please explain this to me really easily? And I'd imagine that's what a lot of our plan members do with the emails that come back and forth, right? You're asking about eligibility and asking about a prior authorization space that comes through or something that can get really complicated or really emotional. How do I then take that information, distill it down so it's actionable for me, and help to kind of curate my response? And that's why they're using email, right? So we're seeing that our plan members are asking a lot more of these complicated questions through email, and we're now equipping our agents to respond a lot more appropriately to what comes through. Um, There's obviously then changes to our sentiment. So we're able to look at our sentiment and we're able to say, how are our plan members and providers? What's the nature of the relationship to this request? Are they happy with this email or are they sad about this email about this topic? And what we're able to do is we're able to basically target areas of opportunities and to say, hey, I can really hone in on the nature of those emails. And we can say, is there a better way to do this? What does the plan member experience look like here? Why are we getting low quality of service related sentiment that comes through here? How do we make it better? And I can say that our sentiment across the board has stayed the same or improved. We always fortunately had a very high sentiment that came through with their emails. But even so, some of those pain points that come through, we've been able to make huge strides on what that looks like. So that's all what we were expecting. We were expecting that we'll be able to do those things, no problems. But then we had these unexpected results that came through. The first one was just understanding that there is a difference between why someone emails in versus why they call in, and really trying to understand and internalize what that difference looks like and how we need to be responding differently to the plan member or provider because of that. Um, this also supports our training and our speed to proficiency of a
Yeah.
newly trained agent, right? I can go through and not only can I pull very specific example emails really quickly to say, here's what this question might look like. I can then also be really targeted in my training. So instead of someone going through 2 weeks of contact center training and they're going to learn everything that happens in those 2 weeks and then, okay, go handle the nature of requests, I can go through in the communication mining buckets and I can say, okay, here's the nature of a password reset email, right? Start learning how to reset a password. So now it's more hands-on training and we're seeing a lot of value. And I'm going to say we're getting a lot more value out of our trainees because now if they do a half day training, the afternoon, I can then route those specific emails that they were just trained on to them. So they can start seeing the nature, seeing the way that our plan members describe this concern that comes through. And we can start getting more, I'm going to say productionalized value out of these training courses that are taking place. Um, the ability to track sentiment on very specific business changes that come through. So if we start advertising or marketing, or we put out these campaigns, very proudly in April this year, we put out a free to Canadians access to, I think it was 2 hours of mental health counseling through Greenshield Health. Really great opportunity. And what we were able to do is we were able to look at and use the communication mining to basically find emails that talked about this and to provide that feedback up to our operations team, up to our leadership team to say, here's the positive buzz that's been created by this within Canada, within our plan member base, within our provider base that happened. And then the final one is mergers and acquisitions playbooks. So think about if you're going through an M&A process, think about how much unknown there is sometimes at getting involved, right? Mergers has successfully happened. They've now been acquired. And now you're talking about the nature of work and understanding what's related to it and how that comes through. I very boldly have said this, that I want every shared inbox and Greenshield to have communication mining set up because it is such a wealth of automation opportunities and just business understanding opportunities. So the ability to go in to say, I don't understand what this team is doing or what keeps their time. Well, I can go in and I can see the nature of work that comes through again. I can see what's happened with their volumes over time. I can see from a volumetrics perspective, where is their time going? How much noise is in this inbox? How can I help with that noise? And I can start tracking the nature of requests to say, does this pathway even make sense? Right? Maybe it starts in the customer service, and then from customer service, it moves into our sales side of things, which turns into a reporting request, which turns into a heat ticket, which turns into, you just start traveling this email, trying to get it resolved within 2 days, and you realize there's got to be a better way to do this.
Absolutely. I think it goes well beyond just automation opportunities, right? Communications mining helps us find CX improvement opportunities, process improvement opportunities. We can really see kind of where the frustration is coming out on a very granular and kind of specific basis. But it does really sound like this has kind of changed your approach to continuous improvement, right? If you can go into a new team or a new area of the business that you've never or you're not kind of familiar with, and then understand everything they do within a few weeks, that's super powerful stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if there's other AI leads or kind of automation leads, but I'm going to say managing your pipeline of projects can always be a concern, right? A lot of the times you have the business coming forward saying, hey, I get so many requests about this. Please automate it or please solve this pain point that comes in. Or there's times where you might be scrounging for projects saying, okay, there's been some delays that have happened. I've got some availability. How do I pull stuff forward or what should I use to sort of fill in this gap? And that's where honestly having a communication mining setup and putting it and various departments throughout our organization means I'm not worried about this anymore. I know that essentially I just open IXP and I point at the next biggest box that I haven't automated yet. And I say, what can we do here to make lives better for the nature of this request? And that can be within our external customer service team or even our internal service teams that are just trying to make lives better for Greenshielders.
I was going to say this really isn't just a solution that applies to kind of external customer facing contact centers. Any internal teams that deal with a lot of email type of requests or ticketing systems, right? This has broad application there as well. We talked a little bit about the agentic world so far. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what's next for Greenshield in that space?
Um, so everything agentics, I'm going to say AI has done. AI is such an exciting opportunity right now, but it's created two problems for us. The first problem that it's created is things that we had completed, things that we had done end to end, we had automated as best as possible. We made it as painless as possible for employees, made it as painless as possible, kind of for our customers or our plan members. Now we've got to relook at and we've got to go back through again and say, what did I miss? Where are the opportunities now? Maybe we got something 80% and we called 80% 100 before. Well, now I've got another 20% to do, and think of all of that work over the last, maybe it's been 5 years, whatever it is at your organization that you're now like, okay, now I've got to re-review those processes. Then think about possibly re-engineering those processes, saying maybe it just doesn't make sense anymore. How do I reimagine or re-engineer the process to understand, one, do I even have to do this to begin with now? Or two, how can I strengthen the role of AI and technologies in this process while still keeping a human-centered feel to it, while still making sure that the employee has value and a really great experience when they're performing their tasks for us. So that's one problem. The other problem is teams that were not automation candidates before, because the nature of their work was so non-deterministic, it was just you weren't able to really have a kind of a suite of tools for them. You now have a suite of tools for. So now it's about how do I engage in in those places? How do I engage with those departments, and how do I set up some workflow for them? How do I redesign their processes? How do I understand the nature of their work? And how do I start exploring what their future starts looking like, or the future of those employees start looking like? So I'm going to say we're not lacking in work by any means, but I really view these two streams of opportunities. The one is how do I get what was 80% to 100, and how do I get these teams that were before a 0%? What does their automation journey look like? What does their agentic journey look like for them? So very exciting time to be in this space for sure.
Absolutely. It's so important to not jump right into solutioning or automation, to think about the process as a whole, right? And whether or not it should be re-engineered or improved before applying some kind of a technology solution. Well, I think that's about all I have for my questions, Andrew. Maybe any final takeaways that you'd like to share for others who are thinking about starting a similar journey?
I think really it's that power, that proof of concept. So understanding that every organization is different from the tooling that you have versus, I'm going to say, the number of resourcing or people that you have. But it's about just getting started, getting to a proof of concept, and challenging the assumptions that what you know or what you don't know comes through is really key. It was 4 weeks for us. We integrated with an Exchange server. I'd imagine most organizations have some kind of shared inbox, whether it's Outlook or whether it's Gmail that comes through, whatever the nature it is, you can plug this tool into. Um, for me, it was about what unlocks now taking basically unstructured information and being able to structure it. So what does that do to your automation journey and your automation pipeline? Thinking about the resourcing of, I don't need an entire team just to run communication mining and understanding. This is something that very naturally lives on the corner of the desk. I think for our entire contact center, we ask for about 15 minutes a week from a coordinator that comes through, of where they spend time analyzing and looking at that. So that's an hour a month of time. So I don't need an army to continue to get value out of this tool when it hits production. Um, Again, just thinking about for us where I can go internally with areas that we haven't thought of. So going after all of these shared inboxes, things like our human resources department, what are the nature of their concerns or questions that come through? Payroll, billing, accounts payable, all of this stuff is just now ripe for these opportunities, saying, this is how work comes into these teams. How do I start making that work a little less for the staff that are performing it? And I think for me, the other key is, not to not to bully process mining at all, but process mining shows you the way that work is currently being done. Now, with everything agentics that are coming through, I don't care about the way that work is currently being done. I
Mhm.
care about the type of work that needs doing. And that's what comm mining really shows, is this is the requests that come through again. I'm getting 40% requests on eligibility kind of nature that comes through again. Great. Now that I know that volume, I can redesign the process with the new technology to support what that looks like. And that's what communication mining lets you get started with, is it shines a light on the volume of work, not the process, and it allows you to take those volumetrics and to redesign the process and to reprioritize what that process needs to look like.
I appreciate it, Andrew. Bob, any final kind of questions or comments on your end? I will also quickly ask the chat in the viewers here if anyone has any final questions for Andrew, Bob, or myself. Now is the time to post it as we are wrapping up our scheduled programming.
The only thing I'll add is just it's really exciting to hear the story and how much potential there is leveraging email, both as I think a channel that's reinvigorated a little bit. Historically was big, kind of started to shrink a little bit with chat and kind of hearing Andrew and some of our other customer stories of how they can really put automation behind it is pretty exciting. And then I loved what Andrew just said with respect to, understanding the type and quantity of work being done is so important. I've always kind of thought that way as well as a former practitioner that if you go after big problems, you have the potential to have big outcomes. So step one is finding those big problems or processes and knowing where to focus. And so I think communications might be an amazing tool to kind of put a spotlight on that in a very systematic way and in a very quick time to value way, and can help you really unlock a lot of potential. So, Andrew, thank you so much. This has been fascinating kind of to listen to the story and where you're going with it. And I wish you the best in Greenshield.
Thanks so much, Bob.
So this does conclude our webinar today. Huge thank you to Bob and Andrew for joining us today, and Andrew for sharing your story. It was hopefully enlightening for the viewers, and I look forward to our continued partnership.
Awesome. Thanks, folks.
Thanks all who attended. Really appreciate having you, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thanks.